Hi, Mark James. Welcome to another edition of the Hornet Spotlight. We are excited to induct another member into the Beech Grove Hall of Fame. Of course, it continues to grow month by month, and we wonder each and every time we induct someone, how are we going to top that? And no disrespect to those who are already in the Hall of Fame, but this is just another indication of the success that has been going on here for quite some time. And we want to say congratulations and welcome to Richard Ridpath. Congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame. 1958 graduate. Of course, the campus at that time was in downtown Beech Grove. So let's talk a little bit, as we always do with our inductees, especially those that haven't been for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. In brief detail, if you can, give us an idea of what Beech Grove was like in the 1950s.
Oh, I think it was a really neat place to grow up. It was almost like I was the luckiest person to be born at the time that I was born, because we just, you know, we stood around in leather jackets on Main Street in front of Bosma's and watched the cars go by. You know, most of the people had a car one way or another. It was just a really neat time to exist as a teenager.
Well, and as you were standing downtown in those leather jackets, you probably better behave yourself, because if you didn't, your parents would find out about it before you ever got home.
That's exactly right. Yeah, right.
Well, you talked about you moved to the 13th Street campus while you were living here in Beech Grove and going to school. You actually moved to this community when you were in 4th grade, I believe.
Right, 4th grade.
And you had, you said it was an exciting time for you because you actually got to see that 13th Street campus being constructed.
Yeah, I crawled through the tunnels and underneath it and watched it go up, because my home was about 3 blocks away.
Now, recently, if we could jump ahead to your time in high school here at Beech Grove, we had a football game here in which we honored members of that 1954 undefeated football team here at Beech Grove. You were a freshman on that team? I
was a freshman. I couldn't make the celebration here, and I missed it. I wish I could have. But I was a freshman on that team. Played the what they call varsity, or the junior varsity, or something.
And then varsity,
or reserve, maybe that was what it was called.
So, and you also are a member of a club of distinction. You were part of the first ever wrestling program here at Beech Grove?
Right. As I was a senior, and we started wrestling. Beech Grove started wrestling in that year, and Tommy Thompson was the wrestling coach that first year. So I was part of that team and wrestled for 3 or 4 matches, and then I got a leg that was hurt and I didn't finish the season. But interesting.
Well, upon graduation, your career just exploded. I know you can look back upon it now and feel as though maybe that's the case. I'm sure it was a bit more arduous climb for you while it was going on, but your first stop led you to what is now Kettering. And you were led that direction because a couple of Beech Grove graduates that you knew had started at the General Motors Institute again, which is now Kettering, prior to you developing an interest.
That's right. I had two people who had graduated ahead of me here from Beech Grove, Bill Geschwaller and Jack Bates. Both suggested that I go up there to GMI, and that I joined the fraternity that they were in, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your course of study. And was there a period of time when you were a student at Beech Grove High School, other than your connection with those two former students? We're talking about mechanical and electrical engineering, so what piqued your interest to take that as a career path?
I don't know. I've always been kind of technically oriented, I think, and, you know, when I realized that engineering meant something other than driving a train.
In Beech Grove, by the way.
Then I realized that that's probably what I want to do. I was always a very technologically interested, want to understand it type of person.
Now leaving Beech Grove now, with the size of the school and the enrollment approaching 1,000, I would imagine going to a place like Kettering is maybe a bit less intimidating and a bit less daunting. Was it that at all? Graduating from Beech Grove in 1958, and first of all venturing that far away from home, or was that something that because of the fact you knew some folks there, you had a level of confidence going into it?
Oh, it wasn't a big problem to go there. Now, the people that I knew weren't there when I was there, because the co-op was working differently.
Sure.
I think it just, you know, I felt comfortable there, and it was a good transition to get from Beech Grove. There wasn't a problem going from Beech Grove to what was then General Motors.
Now, I left something out in
Yeah.
terms of travel. You couldn't have been intimidated by travel, because if we can go back and kind of recap your high school career quickly, you were part of a program that allowed you to travel to New York City while you were in high school.
That was an
I
interesting...
don't want to forget that.
Yeah, we had part of the extracurricular activities was something, I don't know whether they have it now, probably not, but it was called High Y Club. It was part of the YMCA, and they sponsored various meetings and things that we did. But we went to a model United Nations that was held in New York City, and that was between my junior and senior year. And that was a very interesting trip. I mean, we had adult people with us, but we were a lot on our own, you know. And we did the things to visit the UN, and we each represented a country, but we also were able to get out and visit New York, see that, you know, Times Square. We were staying in a hotel not very far from Times Square.
That's nice. Yeah, outstanding. So you spend 4 years at, again, what is now Kettering. And then you come back to Central Indiana and do your graduate work at IUPUI, but you were working at that time. Talk about how then your professional career started to, I think, develop during that period of time.
Right. Actually, I worked all the time I went to school because it was a cooperative program. So I started working at what was then Allison Division of General Motors in 1958, July 21, 1958. Was my start date, and so I was working through all the 4 years or 5 years of college, and then once that ended, you really got a head start on the other people that have gone to a college without that co-op program. So I worked for Allison then for a few years before I started at IUPUI. I think I started there maybe in '70, and you know, took several years at night to get through that, and got a degree in engineering from IUPUI. It was actually a Purdue degree.
I would imagine for you, not only is it a bit interesting to see the changes that have occurred in terms of Beech Grove City Schools and how it's grown, but boy, for you to have gone to IUPUI at the time that you did and what it looked like then as compared to now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even then it was growing, but I did most of my class, maybe all of my classes on 38th Street across from the fairgrounds in a building that's not even there now.
Yeah, I remember that campus. So, so let's talk a little bit about you know, 30 some odd years with Allison's and morphing into Rolls-Royce. Just an overview, if you will, of that particular segment of the industry and how it changed from beginning to end in terms of its scope and its focus.
Okay, well, to begin with, the first half of my career, probably first 20 years, was in an area where they tested engines. This is a company that makes aircraft engines, basically. Small, little ones for helicopters and bigger ones for other aircraft. So I spent the first 20 years in testing, and then I migrated into an area that did the control systems for the engines. So the last half of my career was in controls, where we would design the controls for the engines. It'd be like your computer chip in your car, only it would be running an aircraft engine. And that was really interesting. It got me into a lot of programs that took me to foreign countries, and you know, I spent time in India, and one of the most interesting things was 6 months I spent in Italy, which was installing one of our newest engines in one of their helicopters for a demonstration.
And you got paid for that?
Got paid for it. They paid for my trip over there.
There you go.
You know, and once we kind of got that under control a little bit, you know, it was a rush to begin with, but then we had some time on weekends to get around and visit Germany, and it was a very interesting time.
Now, between Allison's and Rolls-Royce and the connection there, during the time that you were employed with the company, clearly it was a tremendous there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty because of the economy and the changing marketplace in terms of the automotive industry. Was there ever a concern about a ripple effect into the area that you were involved in, or did you always, because of the fact that you were involved in the aeronautical side of it, was it always pretty much sheltered from those issues and those difficulties?
Yeah, the fact that we were in aeronautics was, it kept us pretty sheltered. In fact, when we were still under GM, a lot of times we were the orphan child out there. Mm-hmm. They would push money our way a little bit to make sure we kept going and give us some research money, but they were wanting cars to be made. Right. And so, it was a good position a lot of the time, mm-hmm. Because we always had programs. And because I don't know, sometimes I wonder if mechanical and electrical engineers such as yourself that are always being introduced to the cutting edge of technology, or perhaps very, very involved in the development of it, I wonder if you have the same level of amazement at the changes that have been made and the progress that has been made over the last 30 to 35 years in all aspects of that, as say a layperson to that industry such as myself. Oh, you may even have more appreciation for it because you see the details,
mm-hmm.
Of it. I'm just, I'm amazed at the advance and the rate of advance that the technology has had in the last generation. Mm-hmm. It's just, I'm behind now because I've been out of it for a few years, but it's just totally amazing. You wonder, where is it ever going to end? Yeah. Where is it going?
Well, you got out of it eventually in terms of retirement, but you certainly didn't get away from it right away, did you?
No, I spent some time in consulting, I'll say that's the word. I actually went back into the office as a representative for one of the vendors for a few years. And then later on I did some more like true consulting work, where I would go back in there and help them in one way or another. Some of it was for litigation support, and others was just for general support in a different department than I'd been in before.
Now, I have to ask if you can to expand upon that litigation, that expert witness, if you will. Explain to folks a little bit about what is involved when you probably see it on Law and Order, vastly different than what you see on Law and Order, but in real life terms, explain to folks how you become essentially an expert witness and are involved in litigation.
Well, I took that role because of my experience in the area of design of control systems and integration of those systems into aircraft, helicopters, mm-hmm. most of it. But then what happens is that there are incidents or accidents that are occurring all the time around the world, and some of them obviously involve aircraft that had an Allison or Rolls-Royce engine. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, most of the time it's not the engine that's the problem, but people focus against the engine a lot of times. Oh, it's got to be the engine that was the problem, So it's very important to be able to understand how those engines and aircraft interrelate and how they operate. And I guess because of my job, I had that capability to look into it and help them explain, in most cases, why, well, it's not the problem of the engine, So you have to end up writing a expert witness report and being interviewed or deposed by lawyers to explain your position. And so that's kind of what was involved in that role.
I wonder, because of the fact it's so intricate and so involved and so detailed, were there ever any issues involving patent infringement on product and development, or is it almost impossible to try to snag that again because of the technology that's involved?
I was never involved in anything patent, about patent infringement. There probably are issues there, but I didn't have any involvement in that in my litigation mm-hmm. area. It was everything I did litigation-wise was tied to an accident or an incident or something.
And I guess lucky or unlucky for you, it never actually, anything ever got to trial? You never had to...
No, many of them end up in a court, but the cases I worked on were all settled prior to a courtroom appearance.
So what do we find you doing now? I know you develop your own consultancy business, and You said before we went on, maybe you're not quite as active as you'd like to be, or maybe you are, maybe you are.
It's just whatever. You know, I haven't done consulting work like I used to for the last few years, but if something came up and they wanted me, I'd be glad to help again.
Well, we have a fair amount of students at Beech Grove. I think each and every year that look into mechanical and electrical engineering. We have a new science wing here, and of course we've expanded our math department, our academics as a whole. You can almost start to choose your career path when you come here as a freshman. If mechanical and electrical engineering is a path that you would like to choose, can you kind of lay out a bit of a blueprint for students in terms of what their course of study should be while they're here?
I could only do it from a perspective of a generation or two removed.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you need to have your very basic tools to work with, the math, the science, but what they teach now, I suspect, is somewhat different. Maybe not in, you know, not in the basics, but as you get into it, there's so many different aspects of it now that I suspect it's a little different than what it was when I went through there.
But I would
your
think
math and science are
outside of the academics. If you had a job shadowing opportunity, how valuable do you think that would be?
Oh, I've always thought that was one of the most valuable aspects of the program that I went through General Motors Institute was the cooperative nature of it. Like I mentioned to you earlier, when we graduated from GMI, we had the advantage over people graduating from Purdue or some other non-cooperative school because we'd already worked in industry for 4 or 5 years. We had visited any number of different departments because every time we went back to the work situation, we were in a different area. We had been everywhere. So we had a tremendous advantage over those who had just gone to get their education.
I saw something interesting over the weekend. Of course, Rose-Hulman is one of the most respected engineering schools in the country. It's located in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I saw over the weekend that they're actually in the process now of following the lead of other engineering schools in the country, and they're developing a test for prospective freshmen that actually gauges their personality and what drives them. They figure if you're a candidate for Rose-Hulman, you have the academics covered. We want to know what drives you as an individual. You have any thought or impression about you know, a personality makeup of a person and whether or not that might be a good tool to use moving forward as an engineering student?
I hadn't thought about using it as a tool when you're starting your engineering school, but obviously your personality, your drive, your approach to your work is what causes your success. So if you can get an early handle on it, maybe that would be good for the schools to develop your characteristics.
Well, I think you hit the target because that's almost a verbatim quote from the admissions department at Rose-Hulman.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen it.
You did well there. So, your thoughts and impressions on now being a member of the Beech Grove Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that?
I am very honored. I really am. When I looked at the various pictures and the people that were in the Hall of Fame earlier with Mr. Clevenger, and I'm very honored. I wonder if I'm worthy.
Based upon what I have here, folks, he's worthy. Trust me. I have the proof right here. So, hey, congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I enjoyed our time together. Thank you very much. All right, we appreciate it. And again, I'm sure Mr. Clevenger is going to give him a tour of the rest of the facility. I think he's interested in seeing that Science Academy. There's no doubt about it. This is being recorded, by the way, on the day we came back from our fall break. We have just a couple of important dates. This Friday night, get the kids out early, get the trick-or-treating out of the way, and then get up to Pendleton. Coach Mark Weller and that Beech Grove football team with a huge win last Friday in front of a good crowd here over Mount Vernon. They'll face Pendleton Heights in round 2. Once they dispatch at Pendleton Heights, they'll host Mount Vernon for the sectional championship the first Friday in November. We hope for a good turnout. Also, you're going to see Beech Grove students blanketing this city and this community this Friday during the day. It's the first ever effort, community service. It's a chance for us to give back to our community. We're excited about that, and we'll be talking about that more in the days and weeks to come. Our thanks to Wiley Kraft for his production assistance on the show. Also thanks to Beech Grove High School Vice Principal Randy Clevenger for his help in setting up these interviews. I'm Mark James. Thanks again. So long for now.